hate, racism, homophobia, and President-elect Donald Trump. So what is this all about?
Every day for the past week, a majority of American voters have awakened to a difficult reality. Not only did that man who lost the popular vote win the election, but his election sparked a rise in hate crimes, threats of violence. Since Election Day, the Southern Poverty Law Centers reported hundreds of incidents of harassment and intimidation. Last count, 315 from their calculations. Overwhelmingly, hateful acts of anti-Muslim, anti-Hispanic, anti-African-American, anti-woman, anti-LGBT, anti-Semitic, and anti-Asian.
Hello again, ladies and gentlemen. Michael Matt down in the catacombs trying to figure out the latest wave of anti-Trumpism out there in the media. I think the next 4 years are going to be fairly interesting because it's pretty clear what the strategy of the lefty losers is going to be. It's going to be make Donald Trump a lame duck president by creating the fake news that he was elected by racists, neo-Nazis, and that his election then only confirms CNN's broader point, CNN and MSNBC, the rest of the usual suspects. It only confirms their broader point that white America is the problem and that white America is composed of a bunch of white supremacist neo-Nazis so filled with hate that they would even vote for Donald Trump, the king of all haters. Of course, there's no evidence of this, Rob, none whatsoever. Now, I got a question for you, by the way. You're a younger man than I am. Do you sit around and worry about these white supremacist groups every night? Is that something that is on your
swastika types?
Yeah, the neo-Nazi type, whatever they're doing.
Not a big concern.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, really, why is this handful of goofballs always trotted out and portrayed as having some influence when clearly they have none? I don't understand. I mean, outside of their mother's basements where they drink their Colt 45 or whatever it is that they drink and hang their Hitler memorabilia on the walls, are they even a thing? I don't think so. But I know we're supposed to be terrified of these white supremacist groups because CNN and MSNBC tell us every night they're coming to get us and we should go to bed fretting that goose-stepping Nazis are going to come into the home at any second. But you know what? These guys don't even have it together enough to commit any newsworthy crimes. Do they, Rob?
I don't think so.
When's the last time we saw a skinhead shooting a cop or burning a flag or closing down a freeway or something? They're just complete non-entities so far away that you get to accuse them of things because no one knows where they are to verify your accusation or to debunk it. And yet CNN keeps up the fear-mongering night after night against these nameless, faceless, white supremacist groups who supposedly are responsible for the election of Donald Trump. It has nothing to do with Hillary Clinton being an intolerable human being, does it, Rob? No, nothing to do with it. She didn't have a message. She didn't have a plan. It's because of neo-Nazis and racists and white supremacists. That's why Donald Trump, yes, that's why he really, guys? That's the best you can do? Drive-by media folks, that's it? If there's ever been a worse example of reckless abuse of freedom of the press than this one, I just can't imagine what it would be. At these talking heads, with their sanctimonious, holier-than-thou, we are experts, even after they were busted giving the questions to Hillary Clinton during that presidential. They've been totally, discredited, in other words. It doesn't matter. They still come out night after night as the experts who understand why Donald Trump won, and it was because of racist Americans.
Watched what Donald Trump has done. They have watched that he go again and again after vulnerable religious and racial minorities, and they have taken aid and comfort from that. And that's also part of the reason we now see this kind of wave of hate crimes across the country.
Night after night, they come out claiming that millions of Americans who voted against Hillary Clinton are nothing but a bunch of haters, without providing a shred of proof. This only proves that mainstream media have finally hit their low water mark in the ethics and integrity department. And yet, they're calling Breitbart News fake news when they're out there making things up every night. It used to be in this country that the media had a certain obligation, a certain sense of responsibility to honestly report the news of the day, to report the facts, but also to contribute to the common good of society by not doing crazy things that were inflammatory and fired people up for no reason. This is what is meant by journalistic integrity. They used to have some of that. The Inquirer or the other grocery store tabloids, they didn't have any of that. And everyone knew that they had no integrity. And so they just went ahead and trafficked in sensationalism and scandal and lies, or trying to destroy the lives of celebrities and politicians at will. Nobody cared. It's what you expected because they had no integrity. But today, now, the entire mainstream media, from the New York Times, MSNBC, to CNN and beyond, has become a collection of tabloid journalists. Journalists in quotes, ready to say whatever they can get away with and call it news in order to push their radical agenda. I don't think there's any doubt of this anymore. They're lying ideologues, they're brainwashers, they're pushers of propaganda that would make Joseph Goebbels blush. Now, thank God, finally, and I believe this is true, I think this last election revealed this. Finally, most thinking people, or many thinking people, are onto them. And that's why Hillary Clinton lost that election. Citizen journalism, the internet, rapid communication, Twitter, Facebook, even things like that, social media, has made their job, mainstream media's job, so much more difficult. Why? Because now regular folks can fact check them, which they couldn't before. And this is why they want to shut regular folks down. This is why they want to ban what they call fake news and develop a kill switch for the internet, as Obama has already done. Their totalitarian worldview arrests, bans, kills, finally, whatever gets in their way. As I say, lots of people are catching on, but I think what the vast majority of people still don't realize, and it'll take a while, is that what's really going on here is fundamentally Christophobic. In fact, without wanting to sound too much like the church lady, Rob,
Right.
yeah, isn't that special? It's the devil. I'm going to say that what's going on here really is satanic. It's evil. And let me try to explain that to you. First off, for all their talk about dialogue and tolerance, the liberals, the left, the progressives, whatever you want to call them, they're diametrically opposed to dialogue and tolerance. And this is made obvious by their incessant push to make everything all about hate. Hate speech, hate crime, hate groups, hate. That's all they want to talk about. Why? It's quite obvious. Because those who can be branded as haters are automatically disqualified from the discourse. They're no more deserving of dialogue than the criminally insane. They've removed themselves from any semblance of legitimacy. And that's what the hate industry is all about. So what's really going on is mind control on the part of the Christophobes, who are transforming millions of Americans through media manipulation, through public schools, indoctrination, Hollywood movies and pop music and the rest, transforming them into their stooges and pawns. They're not original thinkers. They're pawns. They're being programmed, told what to think, told what to care about, told what to get angry about. And the way it works is actually quite simple. They've been doing it forever. The formula is pretty simple. If you want to start a race war, you just go on to CNN every night and you tell the world that everyone who voted for Donald Trump is a racist. Never mind the fact that America voted for a black president, not once, but twice in the last two elections. That doesn't matter. Another example, if you want to make sacrificial blood offerings to Moloch or whatever demonic entity you seek to worship, just legalize abortion and begin the systematic slaughter of the innocent, just as pagan death cultures were doing for a millennia. And if anyone objects to that, what do? You call him a hater of women's rights to choose. He's just another brand of hater. When you want to destroy marriage, another example, you want to destroy marriage, and the purpose for which God established that institution, well, you just legalize gay marriage. Anybody objects? What do? You call him a homophobe. Never mind, once again, that everyone's grandmother and grandfather was also a homophobe in that case, who would have fainted dead away at the very thought of such a thing happening to the sacred institution of marriage. Just call him the name homophobe. Oh, no one wants to be a homophobe, so I guess we're going to go along with it. This is what the media are all about. When you try to share the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ, that he came down to earth to deliver all mankind, that he is love, to redeem us, shed his blood to redeem the world, you try to convince people of that, well, you're an anti-Semite, clearly. It doesn't matter that Jesus was Jewish. That's logic. You can't use that. It doesn't matter that Jesus was Jewish and so was his mother, and so were all the first bishops of the Catholic Church. You're still an anti-Semite, clearly. Everybody knows that. And never mind that the Catholic anti-Semite, by the way, is an oxymoron. Think about that for a moment. If a person is a faithful Catholic, then obviously he believes in the afterlife and in the necessity of following some rules, behaving in a certain way to save his soul, right? Anti-Semitism, which is hatred of your fellow human being, is a mortal sin. It damns your soul. He who lives a life of habitual mortal sin is not a faithful Catholic. So you tell me, why would a faithful Catholic be an anti-Semite? It doesn't work. It's a contradiction in terms. But this presumes, making an argument against this claim of anti-Semitism on the part of Catholics, going all the way back, by the way. The only reason they say it about traditional Catholics is because they want to indict the entire history of the Catholic Church, all the way back to the first books of the Bible, as being essentially anti-Semitic. But to make points like this presumes a certain degree of logic, or a competency where logic is concerned. And logic, friends, has nothing to do with any of this. You see, these people, this revolution spent the better part of 100 years dumbing everyone down, emptying their minds, and filling their minds back up again with logical fallacies, sloganism, pablum, all based on one founding principle. Do whatever you want. And don't let Christ Church or anyone else tell you you can't. Now, does this sound familiar? It should. Remember this? Do as thou wilt shall become the whole of the law. The commandment, if you will, of the Church of Satan. So you see where this is leading? I'm not trying to sound like a nutter, but it just really begins to look. When you look at what's happening on the nightly news, you look at what they're doing, the lack of evidence, the accusations they're making, something else is going on here. This isn't a case of people disagreeing with one another over politics and taxation. This is a revolution against God that we're watching unfold on our little TV sets every night. It's war on Christ. It's war on the unborn, war on the innocents, and on family. They know we're not haters. They know something about Christian theology. They know that Christ's revolution put an end to an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. They know that Christ said, turn the other cheek. They know that Christ taught, love your neighbor. There's no threat of Christians rising up in violent insurrection. Why? Because that's not what Christians do. Forgive your enemies, love your enemies. This is the revolutionary message of Jesus Christ. If you're a Christian, you're a follower of Christ, you can't hate anyone without ceasing to be a Christian. Christ went to the cross. He went to the cross blithely. And from that cross, he forgave all of those who put him to death. Don't you see? If we're followers of Christ, that's what we are striving to be. The truth is that the very existence of Christians and their willingness to follow him in the modern world and to follow a moral code based on difficult teachings that requires self-sacrifice and doing something other than whatever feels good at every given moment, all of this pricks the conscience of the secularists, the liberals, the lefties, because they want to do away with all rules, especially those that have to do with the soul. And it's not enough to silence Christians anymore, I'm afraid. Christians must cease to be Christian or cease to exist. That's what we're talking about right now. This is institutionalized Christophobia at work. And we see it every night on the news. Hatred of Christ, hatred of his law, hatred of all those who would follow him. It's war on the family, war on gender, war on the unborn, war on God. They don't care if I won't make a homosexual couple his silly little wedding cake. They don't really care about that. What they care about is that I won't, or that anyone won't. Because it means Christian morality still exists. It still dictates how people live their lives, and this they will not tolerate. This they hate. They don't care which bathroom those tragic transgendered, confused folks want to use. Even at the level, in other words, of taking potty breaks in America, they will not tolerate anything which reflects God's plan or reminds anyone of how he created us as men and as women. This is how far these people are going to go. It's a war on the entire social, moral, and spiritual order of the universe, which is why I maintain that it's fundamentally satanic in the true sense of that word. It's not about which bathroom to use. It's not about women's reproductive rights. It's not about love and marriage. It's about declaring war on gender, on life, and on God. It's as simple as that. That's the world in which we live. And what the left is actually doing, with all their talk about hate, what they're actually doing is projecting their own way of dealing with adversity onto us. They're the ones who hate everyone and everything that gets in their way. They go into the street after losing an election and start screaming hate at passersby, burning cop cars, beating people up, destroying other people's property. Now, when's the last time you saw Christians behaving like that? When Christians take to the street, they get permits beforehand, and rather than screaming death to the pro-aborts, they say, Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death, and prayers to that effect. That's what the dangerous, hateful Christians do when they take to the streets. Why? Because we're all sinners. And we see these people on the left who hate us so much as victims of 100 years of liberalism and social engineering that's gone awry, that's gone terribly wrong. Middle school kids killing each other in the classrooms, adolescent suicide rates now through the roof, little girls killing their mommies, young men killing cops, cops overreacting to total lawlessness in our liberal-dominated system in the cities and shooting back, sometimes without discretion. Fathers paying to have their own little babies aborted. Drugs, violence, sex, chaos, you get the idea. Hatred that is so dangerous on the left that it leaves bullet-ridden bodies all over the streets of America every night. And yet what we hear from the media, it's because we're the problem. We're the haters. We're the basket of deplorables. It's unbelievable. And the Catholic Church that built the Western civilization, that built things like a worldwide hospital system, an international network of orphanages, schools and churches all over the world, the civilizing force of Christ's church, out of which was born the greatest civilization in history, producing the most profound works of art, music, literature. That church was the first thing they attacked. And now it's fading, exactly as they hoped it would. It's fading, and it's going to be replaced by an ape of God, by a worldwide church of Satan that is rising up right now and giving the world its first universal culture of hate. So what do? I think it's pretty simple. You want to always come up with a solution. What do we do as Christians? We keep on being Christian. We persevere in our efforts to follow Christ, and that ain't going to be easy in the days to come. There are powerful forces amassed against people who want to try to do that, but that's what we have to do. We don't have to start some huge movement. We have to resolve in our homes and in our little communities to keep the faith. What they want with their constant provocations on the nightly news, night after night, Christians are haters, Christians are racist, Christians are homophobes, Christians are sexist. What they want is for us to react. They want us to become like them. They want us to take an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, just like they do, just as vicious as they are, without conscience, without shame. They don't know anything about the peace that comes from the confessional, for example. They know nothing about the tears while we think about our own sins kneeling silently in front of a crucifix. They know nothing. They've had none of this, which is why we don't hate them. We don't take the bait. We know who the real haters are, and we pray for them. And if they want to kill us for that, if they want to feed us to the lions once again, then we know that their revolution has failed and that Christianity is on the verge of rising again. All glory to God for that. I'm Michael Matt down in the catacombs, and thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.